Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, Untitled Projects. Thank you for clicking. I hope you all had a great Christmas. We've got a lot of aircraft that are new that need to be reviewed. And I've been flying quite a few of them. And today, it's the beautiful Focke-Wulf Piaggio P.149 by ATSimulations. And I have to say, this is a really, really beautiful aircraft. Now, this is just one of the liveries that they've got. It's obviously an Italian aircraft, but it's got that Focke-Wulf in it. It was built by the Italians and then licensed by the Germans. So it's a beautiful plane. I mean, look at it. This is just one of the liveries. There's lots more liveries to go. Military ones, trainer ones, all sorts of different stuff. But let's get into it properly. So, like I said, it's from ATSimulations. They did the Kraken last, which was that weird little jet, float plane, prop-based aircraft. So there were three of them, one person, really maneuverable, crazy little plane, great plane actually, which was beautiful to fly, really good fun, really fast. And this is their second offering. So you do have to buy it. It's not freeware, unfortunately, and it is $24.89, which amounts to about £18.5, and roughly about 20 euros, 20, 30 euros, give or take, depending on the day. But I have to say, I think this is absolutely worth it. It's a really lovely plane, and it's an old plane. It's 1950s. It's really vintage. It hasn't got all that GPS stuff that you've had in previous aircraft. So it's a really lovely plane to fly, really lovely plane to learn. And it's all in German. So you've really got to drill yourself to get to know this aircraft. But we'll do that when we're on the ground. I'll take you through a cold and dark and keep it going. For now, we're going to continue flying over Genoa, northern Italy, which is where this aircraft is from. This is where the company is based currently. So, a little bit of history. It's 1950s, like I said. It's an Italian utility liaison aircraft. Now, that sounds pretty romantic. Basically, it's a leisure craft, and that's what it was designed for. It was a four-seater designed to fly around, fly from your villa in northern Italy, maybe fly to France, pick up a couple of friends on the way, pop some champagne. That's what it was originally designed for. Now, it didn't do that well when it was being sold initially. So it was supposed to be designed for touring, you know, the rich and famous, and it kind of fell flat. Now, I'm not really sure why it fell flat, but it didn't really work out. But it did end up as a military aircraft, and quite a good one, because it's relatively short takeoff. It's pretty powerful, I have to say. Now, like I said, not that many were built, and there was only 80 that were built by Piaggio, which is the original builder, the original manufacturer, which is an Italian company, one of the oldest aircraft manufacturing firms out there, who started in 1915. So they've been around for a long time. And if you've flown the Piaggio, that was 1910, around 1910, maybe just before, just after, and that is a pretty amazing plane. So they've been around for a long time. They've got some serious expertise. They know their stuff, and they also clearly know how to make really beautiful looking aircraft. And after that, after the German Air Force got their hands on it, they licensed it to Focke-Wulf, who continued to build it, and they built about 190 or so. So it was supplied by Piaggio, who sent lots of kits everywhere, and the Germans took hold of it and did their thing, which is why inside everything is German, even a German flag. So it's all good. Once you learn it, it's a beautiful plane to fly. So suffice to say, there isn't a lot of these about, so they are pretty rare. But I did look it up on the interweb, and you can find quite a few for sale. So you can get them for around 70 to 80,000 euros, which I don't think is too bad for an aircraft like this, considering its power, considering what it can do, considering its relative aerobatic ability, which I'll show you later, and its short takeoff and relatively short landing. that's not bad. I mean, it is vintage. You're going to have to keep it up. You're going to have to do everything that you would normally do with an old aircraft. But it's pretty nice. So you can also buy it in the US for about $78,000 to $85,000. And amazingly enough, you can finance that. Well, but one particular model I found you can finance for $523 a month. So like I said, it was operated mainly by the German Air Force. And of course, like all of these aircraft, all of these trainers, they end up all over the place. So Germany had the vast majority of them. Israel got their hands on 2. Nice. Italy obviously had quite a few until about 1955, and then I think they probably replaced it with another trainer. Nigeria, weird. They've got about 12 Piaggio, and that was in 1967. Switzerland, of course, have got quite a few. You'll see this in the liveries. Switzerland bought a load of them for training at one of their flight schools, which is why we have a Swiss Air version, which actually really looks very nice. So I'm going to get her on the ground and I'll take you through some of the stats. I'll give you a little walk around graphically wise. You're going to love it. It's pretty much seamless. So I will see you on the ground. So before we do a cold and dark start and do a little walk around, I just want to show you these liveries. Now they are really, really nice. This is our Swiss version. We've got loads of German ones. German military, German trainers. Beautiful designs, I have to say. And then some classic red, and then some continuing to be German. Most of them are German, obviously, because it was licensed to Focke-Wulf. And then we have another Swiss version here. And then we have a different version. I'm not sure what that one is, so I'll have to have a look. But I'm going to go for the... let's go for one of these. This looks kind of fun. So, we're in Bremen. And this is where these aircraft were manufactured later on. So, once Focke-Wulf licensed it, this is where they manufacture them. So I'm sure this airport wasn't nearly as big back then, but I thought it was a good place to start. Now I've done a bit of research, looked at a lot of photos, Wikipedia'd the hell out of it, and this is really right on the money. I have to say the detail is absolutely pretty much spot on. All the liveries are accurate as well. You can find all these aircraft with these different liveries in real life. We can tell this is a really nice looking plane. It's got all those little details. It's got everything you need. Everything you'd expect from something you have to pay for. So let's look at the control surfaces. What you'd expect, absolutely. That rudder. Nice little sounds as well. Another thing is the sounds are actually recorded from the real aircraft. So when you get this up in the air, when you're clicking all the switches, when you're taking back the canopy, when you're retracting the gear, everything is just really vintage sounding, really kind of clicky, which is very nice. Now, the one thing that's pretty awesome about this is the levels of flaps. Now, they go up in 20% increments. So we've got 5 levels of flaps, which you don't normally get, even with STOL level aircraft. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that is deep. Look at that. That is incredible amounts of flaps. And when you actually use them, they slow you down. And the reason they've got those is because it is a fast aircraft. And some of those levels of flaps aren't going to slow you down quick enough. So you can stop very, very quickly. So apart from that, you can see it's got a retractable tricycle gear, which is very nice. Goes up very quickly, comes down very quickly, which is good in comparison to some other aircraft that really do take an age. But let's head inside and have a quick look at the cockpit. So straight away you're going to notice this is a vintage aircraft. Now it really, really is a vintage aircraft, and ATSimulations have done a brilliant job at making this look distressed. Now I don't like it when you get an old aircraft and it all kind of looks new and all that kind of stuff. This has got that really lovely feeling. You can also smell, you can almost smell that old leather. But everything's distressed. You know, the joysticks are, all the metal is mottled. We've got this edging around the outside here where things have been chipped away. Now there's just a very nice feeling. And it is an old aircraft. Even some of this leather upholstery here is coming off. And I think that's just such a nice little detail. This looks like an iPad. Interesting. We've got stains as well. We've got where your feet would would normally be, rubbing away some of that paint. I just think it's a really, really beautifully modelled aircraft. You can see this kind of canvas housing moves very dynamically, very nicely. So detail-wise, it's absolutely on the money. And it doesn't have any of those weird sounds that we had in the Kraken. And the thing that I think is really beautiful about this aircraft is the fact that it's... Oh, let's unlock this. Slide that canopy back, just like a fighter jet. Nice. So I can imagine these aircraft may well have been used before flying the MB339, because it's kind of a step towards that. So apart from that, let's close this canopy. Lovely sound. I'm going to take you through some of the dials. So it is all in German, and this took me a while to understand this. Fortunately, there's a really good manual that you can use that takes you through everything. So it's pretty comprehensive. This is what you would expect with Payware, with something that you've got to buy. It's got everything it needs. You've got your classic introduction. Don't worry about all that kind of stuff. This is useful. Your settings, make sure you keep it on modern, which I think is right for a lot of Payware aircraft. A little bit of history here. Shows you how it all works, what it used to look like. The beautiful metal version here. Lovely to get that livery eventually. Hopefully it's not actually in your livery pack at the moment. What your original dash would have looked like. This is pretty much spot on of what we have now. There's a couple of little dials that aren't quite in the right place, but I think this is probably for a later aircraft. And this is what it was like when they had 190 of them in Germany. So beautiful trainer aircraft. So you can read all of this stuff. It takes you through everything you need to know. The specs, all the way down to its performance, its weight, its load, dimensions, everything you'd want to know ever. Nice little diagram there. Now this is really useful. So this is what helped me get that cold and dark. Takes you through everything you need to know. So you've got to read it pretty concisely. And essentially it will take you from zero to starting that plane and getting up in the air. But I'll take you through a really simplistic version of this. And here's your checklist. So this is clearly taken from a real checklist. Do not use for real flight, of course. But very, very useful. So anything, if you really want to do this from cold and dark, you can follow this. Learn that and follow your checklist. This will take you cold and dark. It'll start you up. Then you can warm it up, get it up to 1,200 RPM, get that oil pressure up, get that oil temperature up. And then you can do pre-taxi, taxi, takeoff checks, landing checks, pre-landing checks, after landing procedure. Great. And stopping the engine. So if you really want to go from 0 to 100% on this plane, you can. And it's actually very, very usable. So you can do everything. So back in the plane, I'm going to take you through some of these dials that I've learned from the manual. And it is kind of self-explanatory when you look. Things are in German, but after a bit, you do get it. So to start off with, we have our accelerometer here. We've got our altimeter. We have our directional indicator. We have our RCI or radio compass indicator, our rate of climb. And so you know it climbs pretty well at 1,500 feet a minute. We have our artificial horizon. Put your cage on. You can take your cage off. Don't put your cage on until you're actually up in the air. We have our airspeed indicator in knots, which is very, very useful. We have our trim and slip indicator, so left and right. We've got a nice little clock here. And we have our mixture control here. We've got our gear, and these are gear indicators down here telling you whether they're down or up. We've got our throttle control, our prop forward and back. And we've got it on two sides, which is nice. So you can just tell that's a trainer aircraft. And down here, we've got our trim here. So we've got our yaw trim. And we have our pitch trim here. We've got our flaps here. Like I said, this has got goes up in 20% increments. We've got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So pretty intense. You'll see how fast it slows down. And we have our fuel selector here between tanks left and right and both. And then on the right here, we've got all our navigation equipment here. I never use this. I just fly by eye, which is always good fun. We've got our landing lights left and right, which is pretty vintage, turning them on individually. This is our lighting. So these are lamps, which I found really interesting because they're here. You've got 2 lamps, which you can move all the way up and down. And this one you can move any direction you want. You can spin it around, turn it up, turn it down. I mean, everything's usable. There's only one thing I found so far that isn't, which is this thing here, but I'll take you through that in a second. So like I was saying, we've got these are our fuses here. We've got our navigation, we've got our comms, we've got our ADF and our XPDR. And here we have our all pressure and temperature. So pressure, temperature. We've got our RPM. We have our manifold pressure here. Our fuel pressure, you'll see all of those go up when we turn the aircraft on. And we have our cylinder gauge temperature here. So this is the temperature of your engine. Make sure it doesn't go beyond red, otherwise you're going to catch fire and die. And here is our ADF, which is our automatic direction finder, which I'm not going to go through now because it's complicated. And here's our voltmeter, which is very useful when you turn on the battery. That's the first thing you want to check. And down here we've got our fuel load. Again, once you're opening your fuel here, that's going to come on. It's going to tell you what your fuel load is. And here is your trim indicator, so left and right. And trim's quite important in this aircraft because it is vintage and you do need to trim it. It does take a while to trim it. So it's not like your PA-44s or any other types of aircraft like that trim very easily. This takes a while to trim. Here's your carburetor, pops out because it wants to be known, and your cowl flaps. Now these actually do really work. So if you open those up, in fact I'll close them. They're just here. Then let's open it using my mouse wheel. There we go. Detail within the nth degree. Very nice. And what else can I take you through? There's a little map down here, which is very nice. Right, so how do you start her up? It's pretty simple, really. And having all these switches up here is very useful. So here's your battery, straight on. It's going to light everything up. You've got your beacon on. You don't have to turn that on if you don't want to. Oil gauge and your fuel gauge you want to turn on. Get your nav lights on if you want. Up to you. Not essential if you want to start. Get the panel lights on. It's getting a little dark out here, so let's get that on. Let's not move that light too much. Your pitot heat, great. Your gyro, which this is great when you turn it on. Great little sound. Realism. Now usually this does a little bit of weirdness, but there you go. Calibrating itself. Let's get your radios on and your ADF, your automatic direction finder, on. And that should be doing its thing. And it is. So once you've got all that, you've got all your lights on. Everything's working. Your generator warning. Beautiful. So next up, open your fuel. So your fuel switch is open. Let's head down here. Get this onto both tanks. Fuel selected, done. Magnetos all the way up. Fuel pump on. Got our little light that tells us that fuel pump is on. Let's check the gear is down. Good, good. You can move these ventilation things if you really want to be squeaking a lot. Let's check our mixture is rich. Cowl flaps are fully open. Carburetor heat, not necessary, but let's warm it up a little. Cabin ventilation. Oh, you can hear it. That was subtle, but you can hear the ventilation work. That's detail. Very nice. These are all your fuses here, so that's going to tell you whether your fuses are working. There's another generator fuse up here. These are your landing lights. We don't need those on at the moment. What else do we need to start it? So pretty simple, really. We've got everything on that we need. Let's just pump the primer 5 times, 3 to 5 times. I do it 5 times. And sexy little switch there. Let's go. So I forgot to set my throttle control to 10%, but that's because I'm a bad pilot. Up to 11 now, so very nice. And that's how you start it up, cold and dark. Really nice little procedure. Everything works. Right, so taxi to the end of the runway. I'll take you through a couple of stats just to let you know how this baby performs. So it has a maximum speed of 204 kilometers, which is 189 miles an hour, 164 knots. Now, you don't really want to go above that because you will rip your wings off and die. Now, so cruise speed, it's about 165 miles an hour, 144 knots. So you're going to cruise nicely in the upper half of the green. Your stall speed is 50 knots. So you get a stall about here at about 50 knots. So it does speed up and slow down very quickly, and that's why you've got these incredible flaps. It's got a pretty good range with a full tank of about 680 miles, which is 590 nautical miles. And then it has a 30-minute reserve, which I haven't heard of before. That's a nice little addition. So once your fuel goes all the way down to zero, you've still got 30 minutes left. That's nice. I'm sure that's standard for aircraft now. And like I said, this is a short takeoff in relativity to a lot of other aircraft. So you can take off in about 405 meters, which is 1,329 feet. And your landing distance is very short, so 350 meters or 1,033 feet in no wind again. So this is a really good little military style aircraft that's going to be able to stop in very small strips. So good to go. But let's take her up in the air and I'll take you through some of its maneuverability. Love the way that RPM counter goes all the way up, that rev counter. So like I said, we can rotate at about 90 knots. You can rotate way before then if you want, but I'm going to rotate at about 90. So airspeed takes a little while to get alive, and we can rotate about now. Let's get those flaps up. Now look how fast this gear goes up. This is nice. Sexy plane. So she's pretty maneuverable. You can do a barrel roll very easily. It's going to pitch down very violently though, so just be careful. Don't overspeed it. Take your throttle back. So she turns on a dime at about 90% throttle, and she's very, very stable. Let's try and do a loop-the-loop. So I'm going to get her up to about 160 knots, maybe 170. Here we go. Pull her over. That's basically no speed at all. Throttle her back. Beautiful. There we go. There's a runway in front there, so we can land on that. So I did set our directional indicator at the beginning, and this is actually working very nicely now. So let's slow her down. Take her in for a nice soft landing. So, side note, she's slippery. That's why you have some serious flaps. So, that's 1 level, 2 levels, 3, 4, gear down, and 5 levels now. And then she loses speed very, very quickly, so... There we go. Slows down very quickly as well. Brakes are great. And coming off. So, I have to say this is one of the nicest aircraft I think I've ever purchased, and maybe that's because I've got a penchant for the old, the vintage feel, but this is a really lovely, just post-war aircraft. So, what more can I say? I mean, lovely liveries, beautifully modelled. Let's get these flaps up. So that's it. Thanks for watching. It's a real pleasure to make these videos for all my current subscribers. So if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, just hit the subscribe button. It's not going to kill you. And I've got some great reviews coming out. So in the next couple of days, we have the Grunham Goose, the G21A Redux 2. Now that is a pretty interesting aircraft, and it can land on water. So, and we've also got the Zenith CH701 STOL. Now that is particularly interesting. It's a short takeoff, short landing, which is what STOL stands for. And it's a really, really nice plane. So, thanks for stopping by. See you soon.